Ever since the Russian-Ukraine invasion broke out, the Western mainstream media have been dominated by what observers called media imperialism and revitalized framing of their reportorial double standard. A critical review of the majority of reports about refugees fleeing war zone described Ukrainians as civilized and prosperous middle-class people, which allows for high level of empathy. Several remarks by reporters describe Ukraine as more civilized in comparison to other war-torn countries such as Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and Africa.
The unthinkable has happened to them. And this is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
On est au 21e siècle, on est dans une ville européenne et on a des tirs de missiles de croisière comme si on était en Irak ou en Afghanistan, vous imaginez?
I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles.
Just to put it bluntly, these are not refugees from Syria, these are refugees from neighboring Ukraine. I mean, that, quite frankly, these are Christians, they're white, they're very similar to people who live in Poland.
These are prosperous middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa.
This, no doubt, has sparked trending rumbles on social media, with people calling out the pundits as being biased and racialist. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has continued into its sixth day, is being billed as the biggest conflict in Europe has seen since World War II. However, media coverage of the conflict has come under criticism following several remarks by reporters and pundits, leading many on social media to call out a troubling radicalized framing of non-Western war-torn countries. A foreign correspondent, Charlie DeGatta, said on Friday, "This isn't a place, with all due respect."
Now with the Russians marching in, it's changed the calculus entirely. Tens of thousands of people have tried to flee the city. There will be many more. People are hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen. So it's partly human nature, but they are not in denial.
Although DeGatta apologized later, saying that he spoke in a way he regretted, but the deed has already been done. Also, one analyst said that we are not talking here about Syrians fleeing the bombing of the Syrian regime backed by Putin. We're talking about Europeans living in cars that look like ours to save their lives.
Bluntly, these are not refugees from Syria. These are refugees from neighboring Ukraine. I mean, that, quite frankly, is part of it. These are Christians, they're white, they're very similar to people who live in Poland.
International media houses such as CBS News, BBC News, Al Jazeera English, ITV News, NBC News, to mention but few, are all guilty of this funny act. While the Russia-Ukraine war is often referred to by Western media as Europe's worst security crisis of the post-war period, many have pointed out an amnesia of recent conflicts on the continent, including the Bosnian War in 1990s. In response to the litany of racist broadcasting, the Arab and Middle Eastern Journalists Association, AMEJA, condemned in strong terms and rejected the Orientalist and racist implications that any population or country is uncivilized or bears economic factors that make it worthy of conflict. Such commentary reflects the pervasive mentality in Western journalism of normalizing tragedy in parts of the world as it dehumanizes and renders their experience with war as somehow normal and expected, it said in a statement. At least 929,000 people were killed by direct war violence in Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Syria, and Yemen, according to the Watson Institute for International and Public Affairs, of which nobody really cares in the so-called Western media. More than 38 million people living and from Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Pakistan, Philippines, Syria, Yemen, and Africa have been forcibly displaced in post-America's 9/11 wars, yet media reports indicated nothing is special about these. No wonder a commentator said, off.
That you would live next door to.
Fuck off.